self-leadership always precedes team effectiveness, and team effectiveness always precedes organizational impact. And that's a core principle of ours. So how we lead ourselves enables us to be present when we're where we're at with whom we're supposed to be with.
Hi, I'm Michael Hyatt.
And I'm Megan Hyatt Miller.
And you're listening to The Double Win Show.
Well, today we are so excited to be talking with our good friend, Daniel Harkavy.
So Daniel and I have a long relationship. I hired him in 2002 to be my very first executive coach, and he came into my life at a very pivotal time. In fact, I would not be on this podcast today. I might not be married. I may not have the respect of my children if he hadn't come into my life and basically challenged me to win at work and succeed at life. So just to give you the official bio, Daniel's the CEO and the founder of Building Champions, a coaching firm specializing in leadership and life planning. He has over 25 years of experience coaching leaders across various industries. I had the privilege back when I was in the publishing industry of publishing his first book, Becoming a Coaching Leader, which focuses on transforming management through a coaching approach. And then Daniel and I wrote the book, Living Forward, which is a book on life planning. And then he wrote The 7 Perspectives of Effective Leaders, which we talk about in this episode. And that too is a phenomenal book. So Daniel's amazing. And I think you're going to enjoy this conversation. I think you're going to learn a ton. So enjoy. Daniel, welcome to the show.
Michael and Megan, it's great to be with you both.
You know, as we said in the intro, you played an absolutely pivotal part in what has now become the double win in full focus. You know, without you and your coaching of my dad, there would be no double win because he wouldn't have gotten the double win, much less been able to figure out how we can teach other people how to get this. So I want to kind of go back in time for a second. And I want you to talk about what it was like to coach him, because I think everybody listening knows him as a coach because he is a coach now. But at one time, he was your coachee. So what was he like to coach, and how did that relationship kind of begin in terms of what y'all were working on? He's been pretty transparent about that. So you have my full permission to share anything and everything you want, you know.
I'll give you $5 just to kind of
no attorney-client privilege here.
All right. Well, the first thing that everybody needs to know, especially you, is that he always showed up as a very hungry client. He wanted to learn and he wanted to grow. And as he has shared, both in our book, Living Forward, as well as with others, he was at a point when he came to me where the stakes were really high, you know, his marriage, his health. And when somebody gets to that point, the teachability factor, coachability factor is usually pretty up there. Whether it stays or not is a different story, right? As soon as, you know, it's like going to the doctor and they give you the meds and all of a sudden the symptoms are gone. So you just go back to the old lifestyle. Well, your dad did not do that. He continued to take the principles taught and continued to live them and to work them out to where today, 20 plus years later, he's being used, as are you, to share those principles with many others. And hopefully many others are experiencing, you know, success in business and in life as a result of how all three of us see the opportunity to invest our moments, right? So always a wonderful, wonderful client.
You know, one of the first things you did, and one of the things we talk about with our coaching clients is we like to help people, honestly, in any of our programs, get a quick win, because the faster they get a quick win, the more confidence they have and the more progress they make, right?
Right.
And so one of the first things Daniel shared with me, even before I started working on a life plan with Daniel, was this idea of setting boundaries, which was a brand new idea. You know, the idea that my work would not be seeping into every moment of my life was a new idea, because I was working evenings, I was working weekends. The thought of not working on a vacation was totally foreign, because I would always get up early, even on vacations, and spend a couple hours on email before the family got up, because I just felt like I couldn't, you know, disconnect from work. So he challenged me to set boundaries. And so I remember that I said I would be home by 6:00 and that I wouldn't open my computer till the next morning. I promised him that I would not work on the weekends and that I would not work on vacations. And so I said yes, reluctantly. And having that accountability really helped. But at the end of that conversation, he said, well, thank you for committing. He said, I think this is going to be big for you. He said, because you've committed, I'm sure you won't mind if I check in with Gail periodically to see how you're doing.
Oh,
And he did. And that meant the difference. That made the difference. That
Hmm.
little bit of accountability. He was never, overbearing, but he just was persistent in challenging me to become the best version of me.
Hmm.
Daniel, is that a thing that you do often, that you use that kind of leverage with your clients?
I wouldn't say that's something that I do often. Over the last 29 years or so, I've definitely done it numerous times, and usually it has to do with somebody that I want them to know that I'm very serious about their success, and I believe
Mm,
that's what they need. And I remember early on, and I doubt that our firm does this anymore, but we had a questionnaire, a pre-client, pre-coaching questionnaire at Building Champions, and it would say, "What level of accountability do you want?" And it
ooh.
was mild to do it or die, right? It was the scale, and maybe maybe Michael said, "Do it or die," and I was like, "All right, um, we'll go for wife accountability here," and that's probably going to be the greatest shock collar I can put on him. So it worked.
Wow. Wow. So let's talk about boundaries for a second because you talked about Dad, you talked about this as the kind of the first thing you tackled. Probably not the biggest thing you tackled, but this was sort of like the first domino. Daniel, how do you help high achievers, like the people listening to this show, get convinced that they need boundaries and then follow through on it consistently? Because I would think, I mean, I know we've experienced this and continue to experience it, the sort of gravitational pull back into work is a strong one. I mean, it's not like you set it and forget it. So tell us like what you experienced there.
Yeah. So it's a conviction of mine. I
Mm,
have a conviction when I started the company. Our tagline for years has been coaching business and life on purpose.
mm,
Well, usually they say that a great vision is birthed out of a burden, right? There's a burden that the leader has, the founder has, or there's just this tremendous opportunity. My burden was as the result of age 20 to 30, watching many very successful Ferrari, Jag, Porsche, tennis court at the home, multiple houses, the boats, all of it, watching them win at work and win with possessions. But then when it came to real personal, intimate relationships that bring so much peace, so much fulfillment, so much happiness, there was brokenness everywhere, body bags. And you look at that, and as a young man, age 20 to 30, I was like, there has to be a better way. Like, yes, I want to be successful. Yes, I was driven. I in my mortgage banking career in my 20s, I was wildly successful. And the allure to work, it was endless, 4 in the morning until 11 at night. My wife today, girlfriend back then, can tell stories of me, mid date night dinners, a big box on my belt, which was back then called a pager, it going up, off, needing to go find a payphone and blowing a date night because there was another deal.
mm,
So I saw how intoxicating it could be for me to just drive, make more, be number one, go, go, go. And I saw who I would wind up as later on in life. So that developed a conviction. Then into my 30s, what I saw was I really started this Hebrew wisdom passage start to play out, and that has been another conviction of mine. And it has to do, folks, regardless of where you are from a faith perspective, this guy Moses is crying out, saying, "Hey, teach us to number our days so that we may gain a heart of wisdom." And I did deep dives on that because, unfortunately, as a young man, I had some friends pass away.
mm,
So when I saw people could die with a 5-year-old daughter at the age 38, or when I saw a friend die again at the age 38, another friend with 3 kids and no life insurance and
mm.
just destroy a family, when I saw those realities, for me, teach us to number our days. Okay, my days are numbered so that I may gain a heart of wisdom. That heart of wisdom talks about this deep conviction of wisdom that says there's no guarantee that I can get to what matters most tomorrow. There's no guarantee of tomorrow. So that factored into one of the core principles of ours at Building Champions, and that is we believe better humans make for better leaders, and our distinctive, very much like yours, is let's create leaders who win. At work, they're the best leaders possible, but that's fueled because they're winning in life. They're winning in their marriages, they're winning in health, they're winning dating their kids and with their friends and their hobbies. They're just balanced. And I believe that elevates leadership efficacy because people are making conscious and subconscious decisions about who you are as a person by what they see, what they observe, how you speak, how you feel. So for me, it's been a conviction that started early on out of observing people in, states that I didn't want to be in. And it's just kind of continued. So probably 4 decades deep now.
I have a follow up to that. You've coached probably hundreds, maybe thousands, I don't know, of coaching clients, but what is the biggest obstacle that stands in the way for leaders who want to have both professional and personal success?
It could be belief, Michael. They just
Hmm.
may not believe they can. The demands of leadership today are so high. So they're doing everything they can to just try to keep up so they can lead the business well. And for many, they understand that's how they provide and that's their identities connected to it, et cetera. And there's real consequences that are real time when we don't succeed at work. So oftentimes we believe that our health and we believe that our spouses and our families and others, well, they'll be there. They'll understand. And right now, as we're recording this in November of 2024, the demands to learn are so high for all leaders. And Michael, as a result of my being with you just a couple of weeks ago, my area of focus now is artificial intelligence. Because as the CEO of both of the firms I lead, if I don't understand how this could change the game, not just how it can help us to optimize, but actually how it could hurt us if we're not up to speed, well, then I'm an irresponsible CEO. So that just requires more time and maybe time that I hadn't built in. So there's always opportunities and always demands for us as leaders at work. What has to shift is we have to come to this place of belief that is all around believing what makes us successful in life. It's not just work, which then forces us to get smarter and more effective at work because we make these non negotiable commitments in the areas of our life that enable us to be the most well rounded, fulfilled, on purpose people, better humans.
You know, um, we went on a fishing trip, for those of you listening, Daniel and I, with four other young guys. We went fly fishing for couple days in East Tennessee, and now we have a text thread, and we're committed to getting together this next year, next fall,
Can't
doing the
wait.
same thing. But I think you saw and commented on Brian's audio message where he was talking about sort of the tension between ambition and contentment.
Yes.
Mhm.
And so I thought to myself when I read that, I've been in meetings all day, but I thought I'd love to hear you comment on that because that's kind of the thing. It seems like the more we're aware of other people's success, and you look at people like Elon Musk, or people who are really, I'm not saying this about him, but there are people out there who are really willing to sacrifice everything to be uber successful, which creates this, I think, constant feeling that I'm always running behind. And I'm chasing a carrot that's moving.
Yes. Yeah. You think about it, Michael, when you and I were starting in our careers, we actually did not have the optics that we do today into what other people were doing. We couldn't see other people's victories. Today everybody sees everybody's victories, and it's only the highlight reel. Nobody's putting out there on Insta or TikTok or Facegram the low light reel. Very rarely does that happen. That's like, whoa, you're sharing way too much. Go see a therapist. But everyone's going to share with you how their business has afforded them the opportunity to go on this vacation or how they just landed this big account or it's just real time 24/7 whether you want to see it or not, it's coming at you. So it's very difficult to find a place of contentment if you're playing the competition game. Like competition and contentment, I don't think they go together. And contentment is much different than complacent, right? Complacent is a problem. If you're complacent, it means settling. That's the way I see it. Content means enough. I have a very fond memory of my dad's dad. So my dad's dad, Jewish man, um, he he was just a beautiful human. And during the Passover service, was one of the traditions in our homes. At the end, he would always say Dayenu. And for any of you who have been to a Passover Seder, there's a song, Dayenu. And I remember him explaining to me as a young man what Dayenu meant. And it meant sufficient,
Mm.
sufficient. And he would always say, Dayenu. And it means sufficient or content. Where I'm at in life, sufficient. Every day I want to be content. That doesn't mean that I don't want to strive for excellence. That doesn't mean that I don't want to strive to make an even greater difference in the lives of more people. It means that I'm not being driven out of a place of scarcity. I'm
Mm.
being driven out of a place of opportunity and out of a burden to help and an opportunity to make a difference. But that's a never ending opportunity. So, coming to this place from an identity perspective of where you know who you are, whose you are, why you're here, and knowing that Dayenu, contentment, is this place of no longer being in scarcity and no longer feeling like you can lose. It's not competition that drives you; it's passion.
Let's turn this into a Bible study. But I like what the Apostle Paul said: if we have food and covering, with these we shall be content. That's a
Mhm.
really low bar.
Yeah,
And I like that because you think about it, it's not, you don't need to want what you don't have. You need to want what you do have.
right.
And to me, that's sort of the definition of contentment. It's enough.
Yeah.
So, Daniel, how do you know if you're a high achiever, so to speak, that kind of personality, if you're being driven by scarcity or if you're being driven by abundance? Like, really practically, how do you know?
So the way we were designed is that we have a dashboard, and that dashboard signals red, yellow, and green lights. If we're experiencing a sense of peace, if we're experiencing a sense of joy, if we're not stuck in our own home of mirrors where all we see is ourself and who we're not, well, chances are in that space, we're being driven by contentment. If we're dealing with a lot of fear, if we're dealing with a lot of anxiety, if we're dealing with a lot of angst, anger, frustration, then there's a chance we're being driven out of competition. Now, folks, don't hear me saying that anxiety or depression or those types of things can just be fixed by you becoming content. There's very real physiological, psychological impacts. There's traumas that have happened to many of us that can create anxiety. So I'm not talking about people in those situations. But I'm saying if you have been fortunate enough to not have that as a driver, not a trauma, not something that is just, um, you know, genetically passed down, well, then what you want to do is you want to just ask yourself, what is driving you? What is it that is driving you? I think it's one of the best questions you can do some reflective work on, which is what drives me?
Mm.
And what will success look like for me at the age 80, which is why we start people when they build their life plans with writing their eulogy. Get come to grips today with something's going to be said about you, and that exercise just helps you to figure out what matters most.
Mm.
Mhm.
I was going to ask you about life planning because I think that was a real inflection point or turning point in my dad's work with you. And tell me what function that serves from your perspective and how it helps people to go from being in a driven place to being in a more passionate place.
Well, I've been doing that for years and years, and very rarely do I ever come across anybody who's ever spent a day putting together a plan for their life.
Mhm.
So, as Michael and I unpacked in Living Forward, most humans will spend more time planning their annual vacation or their wedding than they ever will be thinking about, well, when we are married, what kind of a life do we want to have? But we're going to have a 4-hour party that's going to kick butt. And we're going to spend 50 hours figuring it out. So the impact that having a life plan can have on us from a place of contentment as well as leadership effectiveness, how we lead ourselves impacts everything. Self leadership always precedes team effectiveness, and team effectiveness always precedes organizational impact. And that's a core principle of ours. So, how we lead ourselves enables us to be present when we're where we're at with whom we're supposed to be with. And that's the gift. 9 times out of 10, if we don't have a life plan and we don't know what matters most, and if we're running from one thing to another, well, there's a little microprocessor in the back that's always reminding us of who we're not with and what we're not doing because we're just so busy. But what a life plan does is it helps you to really come to grips with what matters most and then to allocate the appropriate time to those accounts, those relationships, those interests, so that you're accumulating net worth in all areas. And it helps because you feel like you're winning.
Yep.
Less regret. And that's really what it's all about. How do we get to a place in life where we don't have a ton of regret?
Mm.
Do you ever get pushback from people about having a life plan? Like personally, I never get it from my clients because I think they know that kind of going in that that's part of what we're going to do. But I do hear it online from people when I post about it.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a good argument against life planning. I'm not saying life planning is the be all end all for everybody. I don't believe that. I think that life planning helps people who have a tendency to want to accomplish a whole bunch in a whole bunch of areas, and they have 10 A1 priorities. Now, you can't have 10 A1 priorities, but they all feel like 10 A1 priorities. So I will always just diffuse the combative argument or the debate on whether life planning is the way. I will say it's been the way for me. My wife will tell you it's been the way for me and our family. And I have tens of thousands of clients that have been coached by our firm that have said it has made a tremendous difference, including you. Now, what I will want to understand in that conversation is, why does somebody think that it doesn't work? What about it would cause you to believe that? And then I want to learn, right? And oftentimes, depending upon the person's overall life theology, they may just think, you're trying to control everything. And what happens when things don't work out? And just because you write it down, do you really believe it's all going to happen? And on the spiritual side, well, where are you leaving any space for God? There's all sorts of people that will come at you with differing perspectives, and I welcome all of them. And I acknowledge that many of them are well founded. But what I say is, if you're living your life and you feel like you're attending to what matters most, and you have it prioritized, and you feel like you're adding value in all the areas of the life that matter most, I say, fantastic. I'd love to learn from you. And I don't need a life. You don't need a life plan. You're good, right? So that's the way I approach it, Michael.
Daniel, when you talk to people about life planning, or you actually take them through your process, which life account or life domain do you find that people struggle with the most?
I would say one of the most difficult ones in the United States for people has to do with health.
Mm,
Um, Health is one that can just be a force multiplier. If you get that thing figured out, the energy you get from having victory there, as you both know, it
mhm.
carries over and it spills over into all the other accounts. It's so tangible. You feel better. You're getting that flywheel moving. But for many, it's difficult. You can be working with a busy executive who has a partner at home, and the busy executive, as you're educating them on the health account and maybe giving some principles or some tips and turning them on to new learning, well, it doesn't mean their partner's on the same
Yeah.
page. So if you don't see it the same in the same house and you're sharing meals together, that can be very difficult. If you are one who runs from meeting to meeting to meeting and you've really never really figured out how to make food fuel,
Mhm.
instead it's just kind of a sustenance thing, it can be difficult. I think the
Yeah.
other one that can be very difficult is the marriage account.
Mhm.
Um, it's difficult, for many people. By the time there's the trust and the intimacy that they experience with one of our coaches, by the time many of them share, they may, on a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being honeymoon phase, 7 days a week, a 1 being, keep sharp objects away, and attorneys are trying to keep it in our corners. If you've got people that are five or less, um, that can be a little difficult. But we've helped them, and it's an area where you see great victory. But those are two areas that I think many people struggle with.
That's good.
I think that one of the things that I have appreciated about knowing you, and certainly knowing you through my dad, is just how important both of those areas have been to you, and especially the marriage one. You always talk so lovingly about your wife, Sherry, and the life that you guys have built together, and your kids and your grandkids, and all of that. I love that. And I think that it's pretty hard to imagine having the double win if you are married without that being a place where you're thriving. Not to say that there's not ups and downs, not to say that there aren't hard seasons. Of course there are. It's real life. But, just kind of like your health, it would be difficult to imagine having the double win if you're not attending to your health,
Yeah.
and you're dealing with a lot of avoidable problems and even crises that are caused by neglect as opposed to, other factors. I'd love for you just to share what you've learned about high achievers and marriage and what some of the principles are there. You were talking before we got on, just to prompt you on this a little bit, about kind of your own practice in different seasons around date nights, and I thought that was a really great. So
Sure.
make sure to include that too, because I know people love it.
Yeah. So, probably the first thing for our listeners to hear is that Sherry and I are 37 years married, 49 years in one another's lives. And the times where we have been really distant, where our marriage has been, below a five, no chance can I experience the double win, because when that happens, and when I have felt that she doesn't respect me, or when have felt that I actually am a magnet that is on the wrong side and I'm pushing her away, it
Mm,
feels like all the oxygen has left the room and I can't breathe. So my sensitivity to marriage connection and intimacy is so freaking important. When I blow it 9 times out of 10, or maybe more if she is listening, all right, 99 out of 100 times it's me. Um, I feel like I can't breathe.
mm,
All right, so some of the rhythms and rituals that Sherry and I have instituted over the years came out of pain points. So earlier we were talking about Monday lunch dates, and Monday lunch dates um, was an opportunity for Sherry and I to go and have a logistics lunch meeting. We would do that on Monday because we were at a point where our marriage was definitely less than a five, and she just had expressed her feeling of not being important to me. Now
mm,
I'm growing a company. We have not only at the time we had three older kids, our youngest little baby girl, and we had a meth addict living with us, and it was our second one. And you guys know our story. We've had 10 plus kids live with us over the years that were not our own. So having a management meeting um, was birthed out of her saying she didn't feel all that important to me
mm,
and not like a priority. And she made comment that I found time somehow to work out every single day at lunch. So that has been a building champions ritual. Workouts at lunch has always been a part of how I built the company. So what I did was I said, well, how about Monday being the first work day of the week? I don't work out at lunch and I take you on a date. And let's just go out and have a date where we just figure things out, so that then during the week we can have a night date and we don't talk about all of the logistics, and we can actually have a date of intimate connection. And then that can take all sorts of forms. So those Monday lunch dates, some of them were after a counseling session. And we definitely didn't want to be with one another. We've had those seasons. Some of the lunch dates were so awesome that I was immediately calling my assistant saying, clear my day. I don't care if Hyatt's on there or not. I'm going to hang out with my wife all day. And I had some of those Mondays. So Monday management dates could turn into intimate fun dates. And yeah, I've got a lot of rituals and rhythms around marriage.
I
Yeah.
love that so much, especially because I'm probably about in that season where you may have been back then, with kids similar ages,
Yeah.
the logistics of running a family and a whole life outside of work is next level.
Yeah.
Just candidly, I would say that's something that Joel and I have struggled with is how do you sort of get all that stuff taken care of, because you're not going to just do it like over coffee in the morning when the kids are waking up. You're trying to get everybody out the door to school. Like it's too crazy, and you don't have enough time to just kind of get your head in the space. And so it can be so easy to default to that. If let's say you have a date night, that's winning right there, that you even have that on your calendar. It's fantastic, but it can easily become a logistics conversation and a meeting and not a date.
Yeah.
But I love the idea of splitting it into two and having one of them during the daytime, so you're not like trying to find a babysitter two times in the same week or anything. I mean, I think that's a real breakthrough, because then it's like you can both just relax and be present with each other at the fun date, because you've handled all the other stuff. And I
Yes.
know, just as a wife and a mom, as well as a CEO, if I don't have that stuff taken care of, if those loops are all open in my head, I can't be present
Right.
for
No.
the fun.
Yeah. It was a great strategy. So I'm very
Yeah.
grateful for it. And I think I mentioned to you, Sherry just yesterday uh, was explaining the power of it to our oldest daughter, who's 34, and she's the mother of a 4-year-old. And Sherry was explaining to her how beneficial that was for our marriage. So that was a big one. Depending upon where people are from a financial resource perspective, don't think that it needs to be all that, expensive. You can do dates in such creative ways. Last night we watched uh, two of our granddaughters for our son and his wife. And on Sunday nights, we get to watch them. They go to evening church and they go out on a date night. And they came home last night. We were at their house. What'd you guys do for your date? And just creative, They went to Whole Foods. They created a little picnic basket. And then they went to this cool office setting that's part of the Building Champions and Set Path offices, where there's a really nice living room kind of setup. No one's there at 8 at night. And they had their date night there. You look at just the budget perspective. Sherry and I had date nights sitting on the tailgate of the truck, sitting out at a park. We did dates in so many different creative ways. So regardless of where you're at on the budget side, you just need to make it a priority, because if
Mm.
you don't, you just need to imagine dates and getaways are adding logs to the fire. If you don't go on them, the fire will go out. Chances are the flame's going to go out. So you need to keep doing the things that created the flame in the first place. You stoked
Mhm.
the fire, you dated, you wrote love notes, you bought flowers, you held hands, you did all those things. Log on the fire, log on the fire, log on the fire. And then for some reason, many of us, we get married and we just think that, oh, okay, now all we need to do is turn the gas on and the thing will burn forever. No, wrong, bad.
I had a funny experience a couple of weeks ago. Gail was off with her college roommates. They get together once a year. And so she was flying in, and I was going to pick her up at the airport. And so one of my clients, she said, well, I think you should definitely park your car, take flowers, and go in and meet her when she comes out of security. Now, I'm thinking to myself, it's enormously inefficient. It's going to take extra time. I'll have to get there extra early, and I'll just meet her at the curb. And Hillary says, I'm telling you, nothing will say she's a priority like that. So I thought, okay. Now I was a little bit fearful because I knew I was going to be setting precedent here. So I can never pull up to the curb ever again. So I went and bought flowers.
Okay,
At
but
her,
you have to talk about what the flowers look like, because this is kind of like a funny part of the story.
well, by the time we had this conversation, I had this conversation with Hillary. It was a coaching session where she was coaching me. And the only place I could go and get decent flowers is that they have an actual flower shop at the airport. So I bought them at the airport,
But
but
this
they
is
were
Nashville. Don't forget,
in
this isn't
Nashville,
Nashville.
and they were in a ceramic. The vase was a ceramic boot, and so I said, "Well, do you have anything other than boots?" She said, "It's Nashville." But Gail was so surprised when I was kind of hiding back in the shadows, so she came through security, and I literally had to walk up to her parallel and say, "Hey, babe," and she was like startled, and I mean, she just was over the moon, and I
That's
thought,
great.
"Wow, I need more of that in my life."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, we could have a whole counseling session on that, my friend. So I want to go there, but I'm going to let you continue to drive on the double win. Good job on buying the flowers. Excellent. And we
I
get paid for
also
this coaching stuff.
Oh my gosh, I just love that they were in the boot too. It just makes it Even better, even better.
When I walked back, there was this little group. I was walking with my flowers before I saw Gail. There was this little group of TSA workers. And when I walked by, they were like, "Oh, baby, who are those for?" And I said, "My
Yeah,
wife of 46 years." And they were like cackling and having fun with me. And it was just great.
it's
Wow.
great. So
I,
good.
I want to turn the corner just a little bit here.
Sure.
And I want to talk about leaders thinking of themselves as coaches. Now, you've written an outstanding book on this topic that I've referred now to both of my masterminds in the last couple of weeks. It's called Becoming a Coaching Leader. Go to Amazon and order it. If you're listening to this, we'll have a link in the show notes. But when did it occur to you that leadership, even if you're not a professional coach, is really about coaching?
Yeah. And thank you for your kind words and the role you played in my writing that book. So, folks, what you don't know is when I first started coaching Michael, he was a group publisher at Thomas Nelson. So, as my client, his job was to find authors and to help them to write wonderful books that were going to sell lots of copies. And he encouraged me to write a book, and Becoming a Coaching Leader was that book. And that came out in 2007. So it's been out there a bit. And Michael, I really appreciate the encouragement. So, what caused me to write that and what caused me to believe that the best leaders were coaching leaders was really my own experience when I was in my 20s. I was given my first management leadership role at 23. I had really no education in business or in management, no college degree. And for some reason, I was very, very fortunate because I had a real passion and desire to learn from other people. And I was successful as a consultant in the mortgage space. So I was a mortgage consultant or a loan officer. I was given an opportunity to become a branch manager. And my method of building a branch that went on to dominate in that area in Los Angeles, dominate in the company. Uh, we did just a lot of business. It was all the result of me meeting with the best of the best who worked for the competition. I would go into different markets. I would find out who was the absolute best. I would meet with them. And in my meeting with them, I would really learn about them, what drove them, what were their goals, what were their interests, what held them back. And then the meeting would end, and I would end the meeting with my next meeting date and time scheduled. And I would just think about what can I do to help them to succeed. And my belief was if I can add more value to them than their current manager does, well, then they're going to want to come work with me. And it worked. Many of them did. So you take that and then you start that at the age 23. By the time I left there at the age 30, I was running all 17 offices throughout the Western United States. And it was a wonderful career. I took a 1 year sabbatical at the age 30. And when I started building champions, with this whole desire to coach business and life on purpose, what I realized was that in that 1 year sabbatical, a lot of the people that had worked with me at the mortgage company or that I had been associated with during those times, they still called me for input. They were still looking for that coaching. So, you fast forward again another decade, and there was an organization where the leaders wanted to bring what I was doing for them as their coach at building champions. They wanted to learn how to do it for their people. So they were the first licensees of our content. And we turned them into coaching leaders. And the results they got were undeniable. Those coached versus their non coached peers outperformed their non coached peers in 4 quadrants by anywhere from 22 to 66%. Coaching
Wow.
leadership led to results. So that has been a conviction of ours. It's been a main product of ours. It's a way we help many leaders. It's just to understand how you can really build a wonderful organization if one of your priorities is helping your people to be the best they can be and helping them to be wildly successful.
I think it's a crucial concept because when I was early in my career, we referred to people that were leaders as managers. And when you manage something, it's about control. And the systems and the processes and even the people are part of the cogs in the machine. So that at some point, somebody developed the language of leadership, which was a big improvement. It
Yes.
doesn't mean that you forsake everything about management,
Sure.
but leadership is a different kind of thing. And then there was this spin on it. I think Ken Blanchard probably talked about this the most, about servant leadership,
Yes.
where you're there to serve the people. But what I think is so ingenious about your language, about the coaching leader, is immediately it shifts from what can people do for me? How can they serve me as the leader? To, oh, my job is to add value to make them successful and for them to realize their potential. And I've had this conversation just almost by coincidence because we were together 2 weeks ago, maybe. But when I'm talking to some of my clients, they're still kind of caught in one of those older paradigms. And I've just said, especially when people want to get rid of employees that they haven't coached.
Yeah.
And I've said to them, I've said, look, you got two choices. Either you can take the raw material that comes through the front door and coach them up and develop them into amazing teammates, or you can spend a ton of money and try to find those rare people that have it all together when they come through the front door. And that's
Yeah.
the very expensive way to do it.
Sure.
And it's also not as satisfying. But to me, the measure of your leadership is, can you take the raw material that walks through the front door and can you turn those into extraordinary leaders? And that's where the coaching leader comes in.
Yeah.
Okay, I have
Yeah.
a very practical question because there are probably people listening who are like, this all sounds amazing, but I'm not exactly sure practically what this would mean. So, Daniel, can you explain, maybe like in a one-on-one context, if you're a leader and you have a direct report and you're having a weekly or a biweekly one-on-one, how is it different if you are a coaching leader as opposed to just like a regular manager?
Yeah.
Great question.
Yeah. It's a really great question. And it's going to connect to my most recent book as well. So in 2020, I had the 7 perspectives of effective leaders come out, where one of the perspectives is the perspective of the team. We have to have a core belief as leaders that our people know a lot more about the business in their area than we do. So we develop this sense of intentional curiosity. In a one on one, when you're a coaching leader, you demonstrate this intentional curiosity by asking your teammate how they're doing, where they're winning, where they're having challenges, what resources they need, where are they challenging themselves, where are they stepping up, what would success look like in the week or two or month ahead if they. You're a thinking partner with them. You're
Mhm.
not managing them, telling them what to do. You're actually calling them up and helping them to see who they can be and expecting that, and then engaging in a conversation that will enable them to go from here to there. So it's a lot of questions. Management meetings are a lot of telling. Coaching sessions are a lot of asking. Great coaching leaders are disciplined with coaching one on ones. They take copious notes, they follow up. We've developed the whole coaching leader system around that book. We've got an e-course on it at Building Champions. Our coaches coach our clients through it. It's a strategy, Michael, that it's pretty crazy because, I wrote that 2005, 2006. It comes out in 2007. And I think it's more needed today in 2024 than it was back then.
Absolutely. Another book on that topic that's really good, just to drill into what Daniel is sharing, and I probably need to read it every week, is The Advice Trap
Mm.
Yeah.
or The Coaching Habit, both of them by Michael Bungay Stanier. And they're so effective. I don't know if you've read those, Daniel, but those are really good.
They're going to go on my list.
Okay.
You're gonna like them. Okay, so Daniel, how do you combat that impulse to do more talking than listening? Tell me this happens to you too, is what I'm really saying, okay?
Oh gosh, yes. Oh gosh, yes. It happens to all of us, especially when we're maxed. Like if I'm redlining and I don't have patience, probably not going to be a great coaching session. So preparing for my one-on-ones, reviewing everything that we're going to talk about, understanding and believing what the end game is. What's the desired end result of the one-on-one? The desired end result of all one-on-ones is that our people are better equipped to do their job, to win in business and in life as a result of them investing 30, 60, 90 minutes with you.
Mm.
That's always the outcome. They're better equipped. They have more belief, they have more competence, they have more skill as a result of time with me. Now, that isn't going to be because I come in and I start telling them what to do. I'm going to ask and care and help them to discover. Now, there will be times where I will be directive. Some people will not believe in the strategy because they're going to think, well, what do you do with the teammate who's not performing? Well, manage them. Manage them. Be clear with them. You're not performing. I want you to perform. Do you believe you can perform? This is what performance looks like. What's going to be required in order for you to go there? I want you to understand the consequences of failure. Let's be clear right up front.
Hmm.
That's management. Coaching is, wow, you just had a tough management meeting. All right, now what do you need to succeed? How am I going to help you? Do you believe you can do it? All right, let's resource this thing. You should go talk to so and so. Read this book. Hey, practice this. Wake up 30 minutes earlier. I don't know.
Wow. First of all, I think one of the things I hear a lot from either people I coach or my own direct reports, I certainly felt within myself, although I think I've developed some ability over time, but is the courage to have the first part of the conversation. Because a lot of times, Dad, to your point a few minutes ago, when people are ready to let somebody go and you ask them, have you talked to them about it? Usually they'll say yes. Sometimes they'll say no, but usually they'll say yes. And then when you say, okay, what kind of conversations have you had? It's very clear that they've kind of danced around the issue or they haven't had the direct part of the conversation, so the person doesn't really understand that there's a problem. It's like they think what's happening, the leader thinks what's happening in their own head and heart is somehow transparent, and it's not. They've only got like whatever you said to them is what they've walked away with in your body language and your tone and all that. But then to be able to flip it and not have it be all management, to be able to go into coaching, I mean, that's like Jedi master level.
I today I led our building champions team meeting this morning. So every Monday morning at 7:30 for 2+ decades, everyone shows up on a Zoom screen. And back before Zoom, we used whatever apps we used, the old Polycoms and whatever there was,
Skype.
WebExes and all that stuff, because our coaches are spread throughout the country. And we always start off with the same thing. We share a bit of vision, and then we connect it to the business, and then we do a business update, and then we have some optional time. So this morning, I had the privilege of sharing, and I might do that a few times a year now. But this morning, what I shared was I shared uh, the part of our vision where I talk about team. And I just talked about how at this stage in my career, what I'm most proud of, what I'm most excited about is when I hear how our team is being used to create transformation in the businesses and the lives of our clients. And over the last few weeks, I had some pretty highlight moments, real like career watermark, amazing. And it was the result of what other people on the team are doing. They're better than I am. I have so many people on my team that are better coaches. They're better. They coach leadership, they coach executives, they coach CEO mentors, they do all of that, and they're better than I am. And I think that is really what needs to be at the heart of a coaching leader. Is it's not that you're just comfortable with your people being better than you are. You actually desire it. Like, I
Mm,
want that. I think there's some wisdom to that, but
yeah.
A moment ago, you mentioned the 7 perspectives of effective leaders. And when somebody puts a number on something, if our listeners are like I am, I immediately want to know, okay, well, what are the 7 things? So, what are the 7 perspectives? Because you've kind of referred to them here several times, but could you just walk us through that?
yeah. Yeah, and whenever you put a number on something, if you're my wife, you sit there and you say, "Well, what makes you think there's only 7?" I love you, Sherry, but there's a story in that. It used to be the 5 perspectives, and well, what makes you think there's 5? It's 5, I know it. And then all of a sudden, I was like, "Oh shoot, there's 6." And oh, you should write a book. Yeah, I'm not going to write a book. It just doesn't feel right. And then finally, the 7th hit, and seven's perfect, and that's the number.
I was gonna
Uh,
say that's very biblical of you.
oh, I tell you what, the 7th, when that one came to me, I was like, "Oh, I've got it." So here's the premise of the book. A leader's effectiveness is determined by just 2 things. Let's not overcomplicate it: the decisions they make and the influence they have. End of story. I'm not talking about whether you're a good leader or a bad leader. I just want to talk about whether you're an effective leader. It will all be measured by the decisions that you make and the influence that you have. Now, in today's fast moving, psycho, crazy VUCA world we live in, You better have intentional curiosity if you're going to elevate decision making and influence. If you, as your husband Joel says, Megan, if you think you have all the knowledge, well, then you are not learning. And if you're not learning, you're toast. Perspective one, if you really want to make great decisions and have maximum influence, you demonstrate intentional curiosity in current reality. If you don't understand the current reality of the business, you are going to become an ivory tower, disconnected leader that everybody talks about, and they create workarounds because you just don't understand it.
Mhm.
How the business works, leading indicators, lagging indicators, the historical high points and low points, the real levers that need to be pulled in order for the business to operate, and how it's doing, not just now, but in the year ahead. The year ahead is part of current reality, as is the past. Perspective one. Perspective two is long-term vision. If you don't have a vision that is clear enough to build plans from and compelling enough to cause you to want to stretch, well, then you don't have a destination point. So, Michael, like you and I talked about with living forward, GPS. Current reality is the starting point. Vision is the destination. That clear and compelling vision gets shared over and over and over again to remind people of why we're risking, why we're aligning, why we're changing, which is always difficult. That vision should lead to a better destination. It's 3, 5, 10, 20, 30 years down the road. You look at those, that creates the opportunity gap. Because current reality is here, that's where we're headed. Well, there's an opportunity now to improve. Perspective three. Perspective three are strategic bets. What bets are grounded in current reality? So they're resourced well. We understand the business. They're grounded here, and then they're anchored in that long-term vision. So now we see clearly where we're headed, so we don't drift. When you look at how many businesses fail in the execution of strategy, it's because they're not grounded in reality or anchored in a long-term destination. Strategic bets, they're disproportionately resourced. They've got a leader, there's a rhythm, they've got investment, there's gates that you know that whether you're succeeding or failing, you need to readjust. Perspective four is the perspective of the team. The curious leader is asking the team for their input on reality, on bets, on the business. They're always curious. What do you see? What do you see? Some of the best leaders I ever worked for when I was young, and some of the best leaders that I've ever coached of organizations that are mega in comparison to, us. Gosh, they're just curious people, and they want to know what the team thinks. They're always asking, they're always evaluating, they're wanting to know about the thinking of the teammate, because they're not only thinking about today, they're thinking succession in the future.
Mhm.
The next perspective is the perspective of the customer, perspective five. If we lose this perspective, we're toast. The perspective of the customer, what does the customer need? What do they think? How do they experience our product and service? How's their business challenged? Where do they see opportunity? Where are they going to be 2, 3, 4 years down the road? And how do we need to evolve in order to best facilitate what it is they're after? Whether it's a B2C business and it's a customer, where are they going? A consumer, or whether it's B2B. That used to be part of perspective one. That was part of current reality. And when I realized some of my larger clients and the devotion the CEO and the executive teams have to spending time with the customers, I said that needs to stand on its own. So we went from 5 perspectives to 6. So that one was the 6th, almost complete. Then came the 7th. And the 7th happened in one of those shower moments. Truth. Sherry's out just outside of the shower in the bathroom. I'm in the shower. And I'm reflecting on the day before. And I'm thinking about being with the chief operating officer of a multi-billion-dollar organization, global, the day before. And the day before that with the CEO and chairman of a company headquartered out of Europe, 30 billion plus. And I'm just thinking about the blessing of those 2 days. And what was it that these two leaders wanted when they spent their 2 days with me? They wanted a thinking partner.
Mm.
They wanted the perspective of the outsider, the 7th perspective. Great leaders, they have an outsider or outsiders to process with, to think with, where there's no skin in the game. Board members have skin in the game. Executive team has skin in the game. You know, a mentor, a coach, an advisory group, a mastermind, etc. Those can all be outsiders that really all they want to do is just help you to think better and succeed. Every great leader gets the perspective of the outsider. 7 perspectives That's it. Done. Book's written. So there you go.
Well, those are perfect. I'm glad you persevered till you got all 7 perspectives, because that last one is huge.
Yeah.
And I think what a lot of unself-aware leaders do is that they assume that the feedback and the information that they're getting from their direct reports is 100% true. Now, it's not that anybody's usually trying to mislead them. It's just that they have a different perspective. And they've got, how we'd say in the South, Daniel, is they have a dog in the hunt,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
And the board can't see it either, because everything is, basically mediated through the CEO. And this is why, by the way, one of the challenges sometimes of therapy or coaching is all the coach or the therapist hears is what's mediated through the client. So you don't really have a 360 view unless you decide to go deeper. But I love that perspective of the outsider. Guys, you need to buy this book, The 7 Perspectives of Effective Leaders.
Thanks, man.
We'll have a link.
Daniel, I feel like this has been 5 minutes long, and I wanna go for, another hour or more, but alas, here we are. We'll have to just do a part 2 another time.
Let's do it.
Okay, so we have 3 questions that we ask all of our guests
Okay.
about the double win. And this is kind of a lightning round, but at the same time, these are big questions, and I'm so excited to hear your answer. So the first one is, what is the biggest obstacle for you in this season of your life in getting the double win?
In 2020, when the world was a little nutty, I guess kind of like it is today, but maybe scarier, um, I started a not-for-profit called Set Path. And that not-for-profit was to help young adults. We saw young adults falling apart, and we saw it so just the difficulty for teens through mid 20s to really finish that chapter and move into the next chapter because of all of the restrictions and the wackiness, right? So we started Set Path to bring life planning and mentorship to young adults for free. So it's a not-for-profit community benefit. And 2 of my sons left their furniture business to help me launch it. It has been a labor of love. We're always needing money. We had a technology partner that unfortunately was unable to deliver our scale vehicle, which was an app. So it is requiring energy from me, and it creates stress in my life.
Hmm.
So that will sometimes consume me and rob me from being present. It can also impact me as the CEO of Building Champions. And the CEO of Building Champions is a role that's transitioning. I have a team that's just so great. I really do believe that once the Set Path thing, we get it figured out, I think the double win is just a bit easier. But that would be my answer right now.
Well, thank you for that, because I think we've all got something like that in our life, no matter what season you're in. And so it's helpful to know that you can do it imperfectly and still be striving for that and working toward it, even if it's not ideal because of whatever else is going on.
Yep.
And that really flows well into the second question. And that is, how do you know personally when you're getting the double win?
Another Hebrew word, shalom. On my life plan for the last 2 years, I've had them labeled shalom and aloha. And
It's so
you,
you.
it's so me. It's so me. With us, over the last years, spending more time with me being able to surf, which is always part of my double win, and in Hawaii, aloha is love, right? It's this deep love, and I love the word, and that's why I love the people of Hawaii so much. I love that. Shalom is peace, and it's this general word for this great sense of peace. It's a it's a fulfillment word, and I wake up grateful. I have to exercise. I have to exercise the gratitude muscles. It does not mean that there's not pain. It doesn't mean that there's, not a child dealing with a marriage issue, or kids that want to have a baby and there's miscarriages, or, sick grandbabies because mold in the house. Megan, you know that story. Or financial pressures because business has been hard. All of that happens in my life.
Hmm.
And I don't think the double win is an absence of problems. I think the double
Yep.
win is a perspective that enables you to be intentional in the areas where you can control and where you can influence. And for me, my faith is such a core piece of who I am. It's a sense of connectedness, and being a vessel that is used for goodness and loving people, as a result of how I'm loved and that whole relationship.
Love it. Okay, last question is what's one ritual or routine that you rely on to do what you do?
My morning routine will make or break me, and my morning routine is it's my vacation every day. So I get a vacation first thing in the morning. I don't have to wake up early. I get to. And I get to wake up early in the morning, and then I get to do my little rituals of, Michael and I were talking to these young guys about it. It's, I'm going to freak your listeners out, but it's coconut pulling, it's ACV, turmeric, anti-inflammatory, sunrise elixir drink first thing in the morning. It's yerba mate tea. It's stretching, a lot of yoga in the morning, face down. It's prayer, a deep repetitive prayer that I've been praying for decades that has actually really impacted me. It's for me, it's my faith. It's time in the Word. I love that. I sauna occasionally. After the sauna, I'm in a very cold body of water, which was yesterday, not today. Uh, that morning routine, a few hours before I engage with other humans, if I can get 90 minutes minimum and 2 hours ideal, oh, it just fuels me up, and I get to be who I want to be to everybody that crosses my path throughout the day, most of the time.
I love it. First of all, that makes me excited for when I'm in a season where mine can expand. I'm not sure about what you said at the beginning. I didn't understand about half of that, and I might not be alone. We'll save that for another day. But I'll have my own version of that in the
There's
future.
no booze in it. There's no booze in that morning elixir,
Just
so
to
just
be
don't
clear,
worry about that.
don't
No
start
booze,
rumors.
no herbs that are illegal. Well, I'm in Oregon, so
Yeah,
never mind. It's all good stuff.
that's right.
I love it.
That's awesome.
Well, buddy, thank you so much for joining us. You are such a joy. And every time I leave your presence, I feel inspired.
Mhm.
And I think that's a
Likewise.
testimony to the quality of your leadership and, more importantly, to the character of who you are. So thank you for being that.
Your words mean the world to me. I really appreciate it. And I feel the same about both of you. I love you guys. A privilege to get to share with you. And my hope is that somehow in our crazy conversation, everybody listening finds something that they can implement, and it helps them
Absolutely.
to experience the double win.
Let's go fishing soon.
I'm ready.
Love you.
Love you too.
Okay, Meg, what were your biggest takeaways from that conversation? I cannot believe how fast that went. Do we say that every time? We probably do.
We probably do. My biggest takeaway, first of all, is that we needed 2 hours instead of 1.
No kidding.
'Cause, I mean, I just felt like I was soaking it up. A couple things. I think the conversation about marriage was fantastic when he shared with us privately before we, press the record button, this idea of the Monday date lunch, the need to kind of pull apart the logistical planning of your life if you're married from the romantic part. I thought such a great thing because I have so fallen into that many a date night where Joel and I end up talking about, the football recruiting plan or the kid that's struggling academically or the, project that's due in science next week. And I love the idea of constraining that to a meeting and then having this time for us just to be together. So personally, I took a lot away from that. Um, I just love it.
I think my biggest takeaway was this perspective of an outsider
Hmm.
and having a thinking partner. And
Yeah,
I thought, wow, that's exactly what coaching is. But this is what I love about getting together with you, getting together with the team, is
yeah,
this collaboration. And I thought, that's frankly for me in my journey through AI and losing to use it and learning to use it, that's become that for me kind of a thinking partner, but it's much better with people. And
yeah.
so, I'm just asking myself the question, how many outsiders do I have in my life
Hmm.
so that I get that perspective? Because it's very easy to get insular and siloed into your own little bubble. And I think I've mixed like 3 different metaphors there, but you get the idea. But I just think he's got so much wisdom. And for me, my highest value in life is wisdom. I mean, literally, it's number 1 on my core values list personally is wisdom, but it's because of people like Daniel.
Well, if you were to ask me to describe him in one word, that's the word I would use. I didn't want to say this on the podcast because I thought, oh, it'll make him feel awkward. And now it's going to make him feel awkward when he can't even respond to it and he's just listening to it here. But, if you died tomorrow, I think he would be my first phone call.
Really?
I mean, not to like, I don't mean like phone calls to family and that kind of thing, but in terms of like just somebody that I could talk to about how to handle things and the transition and all of that, because one, I feel like he knows and loves you so well. But number two, because he's so wise. And I just feel like the guidance that he would give me would be thoughtful and measured and grounded, which is just a great example of a coach. I mean, I think that he's a person who gives leadership a good name. And I think we're living in a time where leadership does not have a good name in many ways, where we've kind of forgotten what it really means to be a leader. And I think the wisdom, the humility, the curiosity, the commitment to the development of others, those things that he talks so much about, when he was talking about being a coaching leader and these 7 perspectives, it really inspires me to live up to a standard of leadership that we don't see enough of anymore. And I think part of it is when we don't have good examples and we don't know what to strive for, and we just become selfish and narcissistic and self-serving in ways that are just all too common. I mean, we've seen it a gajillion times in the media and with celebrities and everything else. So
So true.
yeah.
One last thing. You and I were talking before we got on about the way that Daniel expresses his faith. Now, I get that all of you are not people of faith, or
Mhm.
we don't share the same faith, but it's okay. I just like the fact that he expresses it in a way, to me, that's very winsome and doesn't put anybody outside the circle. And he's just got it dialed into that right level. And we were talking about on our fly fishing trip, kind of our philosophy of that, because I share a similar philosophy, but I think he does it better.
Hmm.
But I love that. He's bold without making you feel threatened or in your face.
Well, and I love how reliant he is on God for wisdom and how much he partners with God in his work as a leader. It's like he's really walking hand in hand, and also, on his face praying, because I think as leaders, whether you're leading a whole company or one other person or your peers, it's a weighty thing to have influence over people. It's a weighty thing to have the responsibility of decision making, especially in today's world that's increasingly complex and the stakes continue to be higher. And so, there's something about that to me that is really inspiring and instructional to not try to do it on my own.
I agree. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us for this episode. If you could do us a favor and go rate the podcast, hopefully 5 stars. And if you could also write a review, I know that's asking maybe a lot, but it only has to be like 50 words, maybe even 25 words. And I know it'll take a couple minutes, but it will so help us in spreading what we consider to be a movement, a burgeoning movement of people who are committed to winning at work and succeeding at life. People are talking about it everywhere. And we love that because we think that people do best at work and at life when those things are in tension and when they're integrated one with the other. So again, thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.